Well, Federal Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland has agreed to convene a meeting of the federal, provincial and territorial finance ministers. This comes after the Ontario Finance Minister Peter Bethlenfalvy wrote to Freeland calling for an urgent discussion about Alberta's proposal to leave the Canada Pension Plan, saying it could cause serious harm. Well, the Alberta Finance Minister responded and invited the finance ministers to a meeting in Calgary, but to discuss more than just the CPP. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith said yesterday that she supports holding this meeting and having multiple topics on the agenda.
So let's have a meeting in Calgary. Let's put that on the agenda, along with the cost of the carbon tax, which is adding over $700 to the household bill of Albertans. Let's talk about the issues as well around equalization.
For more on this, we are joined by the Ontario Minister of Finance, Peter Bethlenfalvy. Minister, thanks for joining us today.
It's a pleasure, David.
What do you think is going to happen to the Canada Pension Plan if Alberta goes ahead with its plan to withdraw?
Well, first off, that's a long way off, and I'm hoping that Alberta will choose to stay in. But we've got a process to go through, and I think it's important that Canadians who have had a sustainable and reliable plan since it was launched in 1965, that they continue to have a plan that works for the many partners in the Canadian pension plan, and that Alberta will be a partner in that plan.
Alberta's assessment of what it would be entitled to when it left, if it left, is quite large, more than half of the assets in the investment fund. Do you buy the Alberta math?
We'll have to have some rigorous analysis done on it, some independent analysis, but I know that some have looked at it, used the same methodology as used for the Alberta portion, have also calculated based on that methodology that Ontario's portion would be 65%. So two provinces would be almost 120. And I have a feeling Atlantic Canada, maybe BC, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and others might have a bit of a say in that. So, I think that it's important that we take a look at, the methodology, that we have conversations, and that we recognize that one of the things that is a hallmark of, I think, Canada is our Canada pension plan, that you don't have to worry at a time when, many things are happening in the world, economically, geopolitically. One thing you should never have to worry about is the safety and soundness of your pension plan through the Canada Pension Plan.
I know there is a push to have the Federal Finance Department, to have Chrystia Freeland's people come up with their sense of how the shares would break down should people do this. You run the second biggest finance department in the country. What are your officials telling you in terms of what a proper methodology should be and how this could or should break down?
It's too early to get into that level of detail and analysis. One thing, I've been in the financial markets for 3 decades plus. And when you deal with long-term liabilities and assets, which a pension plan does, think about if you're 22 and contributing, you won't be tapping in till 40 plus years later. Those changes in assumptions on those long-tailed assets and liabilities, you change the assumption just a little bit, can have a massive outcome on the final number. So, the actuaries will get into it, and the people who calculate these sort of things. And what I'm just saying, and I'm very pleased that Chrystia Freeland, listened to us immediately and said that's a good idea. They like Ontario's idea to get us talking. Alberta agreed as well, and through the Minister of Finance of Nova Scotia, who holds the pen on the federal, provincial, territorial meetings, he jumped into action to say, yeah, let's do this. So I'm just very encouraged that we'll have a forum to advance what is such an important thing for the people of Ontario and Canada.
Well, I wonder how you think that might go, because when you put this request out there, Alberta's finance minister responded by inviting everybody to come to Calgary and then recommended that they talk about the pension plan, they talk about federal fiscal stabilization, they talk about equalization, they talk about the carbon tax. I mean, what does that response from Alberta tell you about the politics at play here?
Well, I can tell you, I'd be happy to jump in a plane to go to Calgary, frankly, any part of Canada, to this great nation to go, including Newfoundland, Atlantic Canada. I'll go anywhere in this beautiful, up in the territories, to discuss the important things that people want us to discuss. Now, apart from the safety and soundness of the pension plan, I think many Canadians want to know how we're dealing with affordability and the cost of living. And, we had in Ontario about 500,000 people come to this province, net population growth Looks like we're going to reach another close to 500,000 people this year. It's 1 million people in 2 years. Alberta is growing faster than Ontario. So we have to make sure that we can build housing, that we can build roads, that we can build energy infrastructure. And that's something we share with Alberta. They want to build their infrastructure, and they find, as we do here in Ontario, that often the federal reach into provincial jurisdiction and territory is a hindrance to getting things built and done. And a great example of that in Ontario is the 413, which we ran on. It's a highway in Ontario, right through Brampton. And it's one of the most populated areas in Ontario, and it's gridlock. We got to get that thing built, and the federal government has slowed us down getting that done. At the same time, working with us to, allow a lot of people to come to Canada, which I think is a great thing. So there's many things we have to talk about.
Okay, but on this particular issue, I have not seen any of your colleagues at the finance minister's table say they're on Alberta's side here, and that they think this is a good idea and that they agree with the Alberta numbers. I mean, when issues like this come up, and it is dealing with the long-term security of Canadians' retirements, that can inflame some tensions. Is there a national unity stress caused by all of this, do you think?
Well, I'd say a couple things, David. I'm the son of two Hungarian refugees that left because of World War II. They came to this country with nothing, and Canada gave them everything. And one of the hallmarks, I think, is things like the Canada Pension Plan. So it's worth having discussions, and sometimes if they're uncomfortable, that's okay. I suspect the other provinces you'll have to ask them. But if using the Alberta methodology would lead to about 120% of the assets being given to Ontario and Alberta, they may have an issue with that. But I think at the end of the day, it's the Canadian way to sit down and work at different levels of government to work things out. And I think that's what Canadians want us to do. And we got to listen to provinces like Alberta and right across the country to make sure that we are collectively working on the things that matter to not just Ontarians, but all Canadians.
Yes, you can give 110% in sports, but you can't take 120% out of a pension fund. So given the stakes here, and given how long it takes for these issues to be resolved and finalized, just as a final point, Minister, how quickly does this meeting need to happen? I mean, what would you like to see Chrystia Freeland do in terms of setting a date for this?
I think as soon as possible and practical. This is important to many Canadians. I've heard from many Ontarians. They want to know that they have safety and soundness in their pension. And heretofore, we've had reliability, portability, sustainability, and so I think whenever she can get that meeting set up, we'll be there. And I think I want to say to all provinces and to our federal government, these are the types of things we should be meeting and talking about.
Ontario Finance Minister Peter Bethlenfalvy, thank you so much for joining us today, sir.